Brazil. It's a name that conjures up a world of superlatives, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, you think huge, you think vibrant.
We're talking about a country that's not just large, it's almost continent spanning. Not just biodiverse, it's teeming with life. And the culture, so incredibly vibrant. And you, our listener, you're looking to really understand what makes Brazil tick, right? To get that in-depth knowledge, but, without feeling totally buried under information.
Exactly. And that's the exciting task we've set ourselves today. I mean, the array of sources you've shared is fantastic.
Really diverse stuff.
Yeah, everything from personal experiences and travel blogs to academic research, even the pulse of public opinion on social media gives us a really rich picture.
A truly panoramic view. But don't worry, we've done the legwork. We've sifted through it all to pull out the most fascinating insights, those key pieces that really light up what Brazil is all about.
So should we dive in?
Let's do it. Okay, let's start with the sheer scale of the place. Brazil is a giant.
5th largest country in the world?
Right. And to really get that, it's bigger than the entire contiguous United States.
Wow.
And it doesn't just sit in a corner of South America. It claims almost half the whole continent.
Almost half. Yeah, it's staggering. And what's fascinating about that size is how it shapes its connections. Geographically, it borders every single South American country except Ecuador and Chile.
Right, those two.
And here's a little geographical quirk. It also technically borders France.
Because of French Guiana, yeah. Imagine that. South America right next door to Europe, sort of.
Exactly. And the coastline.
Oh, the coastline is immense.
Yeah.
16th longest on the planet. You could explore Brazilian beaches for years and still find new spots.
Definitely. But it's not just the coast, is it? The interior has these incredibly diverse landscapes.
Yeah, obviously there's the Amazon, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But then you have these almost surreal places like Los Guimaranos.
Oh, the flooded deserts. Right, those incredible white dunes with the blue lagoons in between.
Exactly. And that dramatic, flat-topped Mount Roraima. I read in one of your sources it actually inspired the landscape in the movie Up.
Did it really? Wow. It truly is a land of amazing geographical contrasts. And given how enormous it is, it's quite remarkable that the country operates on just 3 time zones.
Only 3. That does speak to some kind of internal coherence, despite the sprawl.
Yeah.
And speaking of sprawl, let's plunge right into the Amazon rainforest. The numbers here are just mind-boggling.
They really are. It's the largest tropical rainforest on Earth. Over 6.7 million square kilometers.
Which is, what, twice the size of India?
Roughly, yeah. Twice the size of India. And it covers about 40% of the entire South American continent.
Just incredible.
And what's crucial to understand is its global significance. Brazil has the biggest chunk, about 60%, but it stretches across 8 other countries, plus French Guiana.
So its preservation is really an international issue.
Absolutely. It's a shared ecosystem. One of your sources really hit on that interconnectedness.
You often hear it called the lungs of the planet, don't you?
Right, that phrase comes up all the time.
But actually, one of the research articles you shared clarified that, well, while it does produce oxygen, it also consumes most of it through its own respiration.
That's a really vital distinction. Its primary role isn't necessarily pumping out oxygen for the whole world, but rather acting as an absolutely massive carbon reserve.
A carbon reserve. How much are we talking?
Estimates suggest around 123 billion metric tons of carbon stored in the trees, the soil, everything.
123 billion tons.
Yeah. Just to put that in perspective, it dwarfs the world's total annual emissions from energy.
Yeah.
So keeping that carbon locked up is paramount in the fight against climate change.
Absolutely critical. And beyond carbon, the biodiversity is just astonishing.
Over 10% of all known species on Earth live in the Amazon.
1 in 10. Think about that. From, those bright macaws and jaguars to the pink river dolphins.
Yeah, really unique creatures. And sadly, you can't talk about the Amazon's biodiversity without talking about deforestation.
A huge problem.
And your sources consistently point out that indigenous peoples are really on the front lines of this crisis. They have tiny carbon footprints, but they're incredibly vulnerable as their ancestral lands disappear.
That's tragic. And some reports mention there might still be uncontacted tribes in there.
Yes, possibly up to 100 uncontacted groups. It just highlights how much is still unknown and how much there is to protect.
Yeah. Okay, let's switch gears a bit now and explore Brazilian culture and customs. This is where you find those surprising differences, right?
Definitely, take greeting people.
Ah, yes. Forget a formal handshake in many situations.
Exactly. Be prepared for frequent hugs, even cheek kisses, often right when you first meet someone.
One of the travel blogs you shared had a funny story about a visitor's surprise at that. Very warm.
it really reflects that warmth, that openness. Then there's a very practical custom, toilet paper.
Right. This is a key tip. Used paper goes in the bin, the trash can, not in the toilet.
Yeah, and that's not just in old places. It's widespread because of plumbing systems potentially clogging. You'll often see little signs, even in nice hotels or restaurants.
Definitely good to know. And meals. Lunch is a big deal, isn't it?
It really is. Not just a quick sandwich at your desk, usually a hot meal. Rice and beans are staples, some protein, salad. And people take a proper break, at least an hour.
Often socializing too, right?
Yeah, with colleagues, friends, and after that big lunch.
You might see people brushing their teeth in public restrooms.
Exactly. It's totally normal, just part of the routine after eating. Good hygiene.
And speaking of routines, what about timing?
Oh, yeah.
Punctuality.
Yes. Brazilian time can be flexible.
A bit more relaxed.
Generally, yeah. Arriving maybe 10, 15 minutes late for a social engagement is often considered pretty normal, and while things might have a start time, the end time
can be very flexible. One social media thread you sent mentioned house parties just going on and on.
Yes. It's often more about enjoying the moment, the connection. And speaking of enjoyment, birthdays.
They sound like fun. Loud singing, clapping.
Oh, yeah, very enthusiastic. As all your sources mention, it's a proper celebration.
Your sources also mentioned some interesting things about public life, like public universities being free.
That's a huge thing, yeah. Free higher education at public institutions.
Yeah.
And then there's this concept, the jeitinho brasileiro.
The jeitinho. How would you describe that?
It's like creative ways to solve daily problems. Finding a workaround. Sometimes it's resourceful, sometimes it might bend the rules a bit.
Like charming your way past some bureaucracy. I think I read an anecdote like that.
Exactly. That kind of thing. It shows adaptability. There's also perhaps a tendency not to idolize public figures too much until after they're gone, and a real passion for winning, especially in sports.
You could see that in the social media discussions you shared. Very passionate fans.
Definitely. And personal hygiene, we touched on it with the teeth brushing, but it's a big deal generally.
There was that quote, wasn't there?
Right.
Somos pobres, mas somos limpiños.
We are poor, but we are clean.
Yeah.
At least one shower a day is pretty much essential, often more in hotter areas.
Communication style can also be a bit different, more nuanced.
Sometimes, yes. Reading between the lines can be important. And social gatherings often start quite a bit later than the stated time.
Good to know. And we should remember, Brazil isn't monolithic, culturally speaking.
Absolutely not. Huge regional differences. North versus south, coastal versus interior. It all varies. But some things are common, like food staples.
Rice and beans. Everywhere, right?
Pretty much. And feijoada, that amazing bean stew with beef and pork, widely seen as the national dish.
Delicious. And of course, Carnival.
You can't talk culture without mentioning Carnival, especially in Rio. It's just massive. Guinness World Records calls it the world's biggest party.
About 2 million people a day on the streets.
Something like that, yeah. But it's not just Rio. Other cities have huge celebrations too, and there's also Festa Junina and Julina.
June and July festivals, right? Also big cultural events. Oh, and that sweet little birthday tradition.
Yes. Giving the first slice of birthday cake to the person you love or appreciate the most.
Lovely. Okay, let's shift focus now to Brazil's history and politics. It all started, European-wise, with Portuguese colonization in 1500.
Right, which is why Brazil is unique in South America. It speaks Portuguese. And interestingly, linguists say modern Brazilian Portuguese is actually quite similar in some ways to 16th century Portuguese.
Fascinating. But the Portuguese didn't arrive in Inempai land.
No, absolutely not. They encountered indigenous peoples like the Tupinamba. The native population was estimated in the millions.
But sadly, that population declined dramatically over the centuries.
Tragically, yes. Brazil then remained under Portuguese rule for over 300 years. Independence finally came on September 7th, 1822.
Independence Day, a key date.
A very pivotal date. But it wasn't entirely smooth sailing before that. There were attempts by the Dutch to invade in the 17th century.
Which the Portuguese fought off. And then came gold.
Yes, the discovery of gold around 1695. That really changed things. Triggered a gold rush, boosted the economy, and brought in more Europeans.
And much later, a big change moving the capital.
Right. From Rio de Janeiro to Brasília in 1960, Brasília was a planned city designed by the famous architect Oscar Niemeyer.
In the shape of an airplane, apparently.
When viewed from above, yes. The idea was to have a more central, sort of neutral capital.
Makes sense. And the Brazilian flag itself is full of symbolism.
It really is. The green and yellow are often linked to the imperial houses, Braganza and Habsburg. though some say it's the forests and gold.
A bit of debate there.
A bit. And the blue disc has 27 stars, one for each state, showing the night sky over Rio on the day Brazil became a republic, plus the motto.
Ordem e progresso. Order and progress. And the yellow diamond shape. Some link that to gold reserves, too.
That's another interpretation, yeah. Wealth. Finally, on the political history side, it's important to mention the military dictatorship.
Yes, from 1964 to 1985, a difficult period.
Definitely. A time of political repression, exile for some. It still casts a shadow and influences discussions today, as some of your sources pointed out.
Okay, moving towards the economy. Historically, Brazil's economy has relied heavily on different resources, hasn't it?
Absolutely. It started with Brazilwood, where the country gets its name, then sugarcane, then gold and diamonds, and of course, coffee.
King Coffee. Still the world's largest producer for, what, 150 years?
For the last 150 years, yes. An incredible run. A more recent milestone was energy independence in 2006.
How do they manage that?
A big part is their leadership in ethanol fuel. A huge portion of their cars are flex fuel, running on gasoline or ethanol. Plus, they have significant renewable energy, especially hydroelectric power.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
But despite growth sometimes, consumer confidence seems a bit fragile.
Your sources did suggest that, yes. Things like inflation and high interest rates can really impact how people feel about the economy and their spending.
And there were hints of generational differences.
Yeah, sometimes younger Brazilians who maybe didn't live through the hyperinflation periods of the past might show different levels of optimism or spending habits compared to older generations. It's complex.
Interesting nuance. And São Paulo is a powerhouse, right?
Oh, absolutely. A major global city, 10th richest in the world, largest economy in the Southern Hemisphere, huge economic engine.
Yet, public investment in culture is relatively small.
As a percentage of the total budget, yes, according to the info you shared. But on the other hand, internet and social media use.
Through the roof, apparently. Very digitally connected country.
Definitely. Okay, now for some of those really intriguing, maybe slightly weird facts that popped up.
Yes. Let's do it. How about Snake Island? Ilha da Caimara Grande.
Oh, right. Filled with venomous snakes. Golden lanceheads, I think? So many that it's forbidden for civilians to go there.
Like 5 snakes per square meter? Crazy. Not somewhere you want to get stranded.
Definitely not. A place you can visit, though, is Brasília. And drive on the monumental axis.
Which is supposed to be the world's widest road.
That's what one source claimed, yeah. Apparently wide enough for 160 cars side by side, theoretically.
Wow, okay, that's wide. And Brazil has the largest Japanese community outside Japan.
It does, a huge Japanese diaspora. Also significant Lebanese and Italian communities, too. It's a real melting pot from immigration waves.
We mentioned coffee, but worth saying again. Top producer for 150 years. And religion.
Often cited as having the largest Catholic population in the world.
And it shares those incredible Iguazu Falls with Argentina.
A truly spectacular natural wonder. On a progressive note, Brazil was actually the first country to ban tanning beds.
Really? And it covers gender confirmation surgery under public health insurance.
Yes, quite forward-thinking in those specific areas. But then you get some stranger local laws.
Huh. Yes, like the mayor who tried to ban rainfall.
Or the town that tried to ban death because the cemetery was full. And Rio's strict plastic straw ban, and one city mandating correct Portuguese on all ads.
You couldn't make it up. And then the Osama bin Laden themed bars.
Apparently 2 of them exist. Quite the unusual theme choice.
Definitely a conversation starter. On a much more positive note, those prison programs sound interesting.
Yeah, reducing sentences for reading books or for generating power for the town on exercise bikes. Really innovative ideas.
That's fantastic. And Brazil's involvement in the world wars, often overlooked.
It is often overlooked, but they did contribute significantly in WWII with troops fighting in Italy. And there's still that debate about the first flight.
Alberto Santos Dumont versus the Wright brothers.
Exactly. Brazilians strongly championed Santos Dumont's 14 Bs for the first unassisted takeoff.
Right, the whole catapult thing. And we mentioned the flag-colored nature gold versus royal houses.
Yeah, differing views persist. And the linguistic history is fascinating too, with indigenous languages like lingua oral being important early on.
And the huge influence of indigenous and African languages on Brazilian Portuguese today.
Absolutely, you can really hear it. And finally, Rio's history with the transatlantic slave trade is significant and sobering. Places like Olonga Wharf.
A UNESCO site now, recognizing that history. Very important. And on a completely different note, Brazilian funk music is blowing up internationally.
It really is, gaining a lot of traction worldwide.
So as we start to wrap this up, wow, it's clear Brazil is just immense, full of these fascinating contrasts.
Absolutely. We've covered so much ground. The diverse landscapes, the really vibrant, complex culture with its unique customs.
The deep layered history, the evolving economy, and just tons of intriguing facts.
Yeah. What really stands out is just the sheer diversity and complexity. Those aha moments, like understanding the Amazon's real role, or why you put toilet paper in the bin.
Right. Or the historical threads shaping today. It really defies any simple label, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It's been great weaving together all those different perspectives you shared.
It really has.
Yeah.
So maybe a final thought for you listening to ponder. With this mix of deep tradition and really rapid modernization in Brazil, what do you think the next surprising chapter might be?
Or maybe thinking about that incredible biodiversity facing threats. What role can people around the world play in its preservation? Something to think about.
Definitely. We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity to explore even more about the aspects of Brazil that caught your interest today.